From the outside, it looked like just another bad rookie performance. A young quarterback thrown into a brutal matchup, overwhelmed by the moment, and exposed on national television. But the truth behind Shedeur Sanders' chaotic NFL debut is a whole lot darker, and it raises a question Cleveland fans can't ignore anymore. Was Shedeur ever the real issue, or did the Browns sabotage him long before he stepped onto that field? Because what happened on November 17th wasn't the story of a quarterback who wasn't ready. It was the story of a franchise that never bothered to prepare the quarterback it drafted. Think about the stakes: a rivalry game against Baltimore, one of the most violent, disciplined, and unforgiving defenses in football. Dillon Gabriel gets knocked out, and suddenly Shedeur, a fifth-round rookie who hasn't taken a real snap all season, is told to grab his helmet and save the day. No rhythm, no chemistry, no first-team reps, no warnings. Just go. And the numbers looked ugly. 4 completions, 16 attempts, 1 interception, 2 sacks, 47 total yards. A stat line people online immediately turned into memes. Overnight, he went from promising college star to the internet's punching bag. But those numbers weren't the real failure. They were the symptom of a deeper problem the Browns created months before kickoff. Because if you look past the noise, the troll comments, the hot takes, the "I told you he wasn't ready" crowd, the truth becomes impossible to ignore. Shedeur wasn't thrown into the fire. He was thrown into an explosion. And the people responsible weren't wearing helmets. They were wearing headsets. Coaches, coordinators, executives. The very people meant to guide a young quarterback through his transition to the NFL watched him struggle for 7 months and did almost nothing to prepare him. And when he finally stepped onto the field, all of Cleveland saw the result. But the shocking part wasn't the performance. It was what came out after the game. The confession that turned a bad outing into a full-blown organizational scandal. And what happened next? That's where the real story begins. The Browns' collapse against the Ravens wasn't just another loss. It was a full-blown disaster that exposed every flaw buried beneath weeks of excuses and false confidence. From the moment the offense stepped onto the field, nothing looked coordinated. The line was confused, the receivers looked unprepared, and the rhythm was non-existent. But the biggest problem wasn't the mistakes. It was the complete lack of identity. Nobody seemed to know who was supposed to lead the unit or what the actual game plan was supposed to be. Thrown straight into chaos, Shedeur Sanders entered under the worst possible circumstances. No chemistry, no first-team reps, and no protection. And yet, even in that mess, he showed more composure than anyone expected. He took hits, stayed poised, and tried to spark something in an offense that had mentally checked out before halftime. His mistakes weren't from inexperience. They were from being asked to salvage a situation that no quarterback could fix. Meanwhile, the coaching staff looked paralyzed. Adjustments came late or not at all. Routes didn't change. Blocking schemes weren't corrected, and the team continued spiraling. The Ravens didn't just outplay Cleveland. They out-prepared them, out-coached them, and out-executed them in every phase. By the time the final whistle blew, it wasn't the scoreboard that embarrassed the Browns. It was the realization that their problems are deeper than one bad game. It was a meltdown. That raised real questions about leadership, preparation, and trust inside the locker room. And unless something changes soon, this won't be remembered as the turning point. It'll be remembered as the beginning of a bigger collapse. For 7 long months, the Browns operated under a plan that never made sense, and now the results are finally showing. While other teams spent the offseason sharpening timing, building chemistry, and giving their young quarterbacks real developmental opportunities, Cleveland did the opposite. Shedeur Sanders, one of the most naturally composed young QBs in the league, spent months watching from the sideline instead of taking meaningful first-team reps. This wasn't accidental. It was a stubborn decision, rooted in protecting ego rather than building the best roster. The coaches were so focused on proving their original depth chart right that they ignored what was unfolding on the field every single week. Shedeur was progressing faster, adapting quicker, and showing a higher ceiling than expected. And still, they kept him boxed out of real preparation. By the time he finally touched the field, the damage was obvious. Timing with receivers was off. Communication with the offensive line wasn't there. The chemistry that should have been built through months of reps simply didn't exist. None of that is on Shedeur. It's on the staff that failed to prepare him for a role they should have known he'd eventually need to fill. The most frustrating part? Everyone around the league saw it coming. Analysts, former players, and even Browns fans were calling out the rep imbalance months ago. You can't treat a young QB like an emergency option and then expect him to magically look polished under pressure. The Browns didn't just underprepare Shedeur, they underprepared themselves. And now, the consequences of those 7 months of neglect are showing up in every snapped ball and every broken drive. Rizzo didn't just criticize the Browns, he detonated a truth bomb right in the middle of Cleveland sports media. His message was simple, blunt, and impossible for the organization to ignore. This mess is self-inflicted. And for the first time, someone with a major platform said out loud what fans have been screaming for weeks. Rizzo exposed the core issue. This coaching staff talks about accountability, but refuses to hold itself to the same standard. He pointed out how the Browns spent months bragging about competition, yet when it came to the quarterback room, they made their decision long before anyone touched the field. They weren't evaluating performance. They weren't adjusting based on results. They were protecting their own narrative, even as the offense kept sinking. He also highlighted the lack of leadership inside the building. When things go wrong, this team searches for scapegoats instead of solutions. Young players get blamed, the playbook gets blamed, even injuries get blamed. Yet the decision-makers who created the chaos walk away untouched. Rizzo made it clear. Cleveland has talent, but not direction. And then came the line that really struck a nerve. His warning that the Browns are wasting the early development of a quarterback who clearly has the poise, accuracy, and mentality to become special. You can't mishandle reps, rotations, and preparation, then be shocked when the offense looks unprepared. Rizzo's call-out wasn't drama. It was a wake-up call. And for a franchise already on thin ice with its own fan base, it's the kind of public pressure that forces change. Whether they're ready for it or not, for years, Kevin Stefanski has been praised as an offensive mind. But when you look closely, a strange pattern keeps repeating itself. Every quarterback who lands in his system seems to hit the same wall: confusion, hesitation, and a slow decline in confidence. And now, fans are starting to wonder if this is more than coincidence. The issue isn't talent. Stefanski has coached veterans, young players, pocket passers, and mobile quarterbacks. Yet the outcome somehow always looks the same. Drives stall, timing collapses, and instead of adjusting to the strengths of his quarterbacks, Stefanski forces everyone into the exact same system, whether it fits them or not. Rumors have even floated around that some players feel the playbook is overly complicated, making simple reads harder than they need to be. What makes this curse even more alarming is how quickly it affects new arrivals. Quarterbacks come in with energy and fresh ideas, but within weeks, they look robotic, cautious, and afraid to make a mistake. It's as if the system squeezes the creativity right out of them. And when things fall apart, Stefanski never seems to take responsibility. He just talks about execution and moves on. Fans are terrified that the same cycle is starting again with the young quarterback everyone's watching. Early flashes of talent are being overshadowed by questionable coaching decisions, limited reps, and constant tinkering with the offense. If this pattern continues, Cleveland could end up wasting another promising career. But this storyline isn't finished yet, and what happened next made the city question everything about its head coach. When the Browns pulled the trigger on the Joe Flacco trade, the city expected stability, a veteran presence, a calm mind, someone who could hold things together while the younger quarterbacks developed. But instead of calming the chaos, the move cracked the entire locker room wide open. Many fans still say this was the moment everything started spiraling. From the outside, the trade looked harmless. Flacco had experience, a steady arm, and a reputation for stepping up in big moments. But the reality inside the building was completely different. Rumors suggest several players felt blindsided, especially the younger quarterbacks who had been told they'd get chances to compete. Overnight, that promise evaporated. Reps were shuffled, roles were unclear, and the offense lost any rhythm it was trying to build. What made things worse was how quickly pressure started building around the QB room. Reporters questioned every throw, every snap, every small mistake. And instead of giving structure, the coaches seemed unsure how to balance developing the future while leaning on the past. That lack of direction created tension, not just for the quarterbacks, but for the entire offense. Fans wanted leadership. Instead, they got mixed signals and frustration. Behind the scenes, whispers started circulating that bringing in Flacco wasn't just a football decision, it was a panic move, a decision made out of fear rather than strategy. But the real fallout didn't become clear until weeks later, when one moment exposed just how divided the team had become. When that final drive began, nobody expected anything special. The Browns had been sluggish all game, the crowd was restless, and the offense looked completely out of sync. But then, something unexpected happened, something that made everyone in the stadium sit up a little straighter. The rookie stepped onto the field with a calm that didn't match the chaos happening around him. And for the first time that night, the offense finally looked alive. He started the drive with a sharp throw to the sideline. Nothing flashy, but enough to spark some hope. Then came another quick completion. Suddenly, the tempo shifted. The huddle moved faster. Players who had been dragging minutes earlier looked energized. You could feel it. Every fan, every player, even the commentators sensed that something was building. It was as if he flipped a switch the coaching staff had been too afraid to touch. Rumors later suggested that several veterans were shocked at how poised he was. No overthinking, no hesitation, just clean, confident football. And as the Browns crossed midfield, you could hear the crowd growing louder, hoping they were witnessing the moment a new leader stepped forward. But the defining moment of the drive wasn't a throw, it was the hit. A defender came crashing in untouched, and the rookie got folded in half. Everyone expected him to stay down. Instead, he bounced right back up, eyes locked on the next play. That single act of toughness changed the way the entire sideline looked at him. Even players who had been skeptical earlier were suddenly locked in, ready to fight for every yard. The drive didn't end in a miracle touchdown, but it didn't need to. What mattered was the message he sent. He wasn't rattled, he wasn't scared, and he wasn't going to back down just because the moment was big. For a team dealing with uncertainty and mixed leadership, that kind of presence meant everything. And while the scoreboard didn't capture it, everyone in the building knew they had just witnessed the moment that forced the coaching staff to rethink everything they believed about the quarterback room. Because what came next would change the season entirely. After the game, most players rushed off the field without saying much. It was one of those nights where silence felt safer than honesty. But Shedeur didn't hide. He sat down in front of the cameras, took a breath, and dropped a confession that instantly shifted the entire narrative. With no anger in his voice, he explained that he had barely taken any reps all week. Not with the starters, not even consistently with the backups. He was thrown into the fire cold and still ended up looking like the calmest player on the roster. That single statement sent shockwaves through Cleveland. Fans felt blindsided. Analysts questioned what the coaching staff was doing, and teammates, according to reports, were quietly frustrated that the one guy who kept the offense steady was also the one being prepared the least. Shedeur didn't call anyone out directly, but the message was impossible to ignore. The situation behind the scenes was way more chaotic than anyone realized. What made his confession hit even harder was the way he delivered it. No excuses, no pity, just the truth. He acknowledged the mistakes, admitted the offense needed to be better, and still carried himself like someone who wasn't afraid of the moment. That maturity, especially coming from a rookie, left fans wondering why he hadn't been given a real shot earlier. And as the clip went viral, one thing became clear. This wasn't just a post-game interview. It was a warning shot. Something inside the organization needed to change, and fast, because what Shedeur revealed was only the beginning. The real storm was still on its way. The moment talk of a coaching change started circulating in Cleveland, everything around the quarterback situation shifted. A new coach doesn't just bring a new playbook. He brings his own vision, his own system, and most importantly, his own quarterback. And that reality sent a wave of uncertainty through the entire organization. Rumors quickly spread that if the Browns pulled the trigger on hiring someone fresh, the first move would be reassessing the depth chart from the ground up. Coaching change. They were staring at a turning point, and whichever path they chose could define Shedeur's future, the locker room's trust, and the franchise's identity for years to come. For decades, the Browns have lived under a shadow that almost feels supernatural. No matter who walks through the doors, rookies, veterans, former stars, promising prospects, something always seems to go wrong. Injuries, coaching changes, locker room tension, scheme mismatches, you name it. The pattern repeats so often that fans stopped calling it bad luck and started calling it what it really feels like: a curse. Every time the franchise thinks it's finally found the guy, the story collapses. Sometimes it's because the supporting cast falls apart. Sometimes the coaching staff shifts direction mid-season. And sometimes the pressure of carrying an entire city ends up breaking the most talented players. It's a cycle Cleveland can't seem to escape. This season only made that narrative stronger. With quarterbacks rotating in and out and the offense constantly scrambling to adjust, the curse felt more alive than ever. Even insiders admitted that no position in the building carries more stress or scrutiny. And for Shedeur Sanders, stepping into that chaos with barely any preparation only highlighted how deep the issue truly runs. But here's the twist. Some analysts believe the so-called curse isn't supernatural at all. They say it's the result of unstable leadership, rushed decisions, and a franchise that keeps resetting before anything can grow. And if that's true, then breaking the curse isn't about finding a miracle quarterback. It's about finally building something consistent. Whether Cleveland actually does that or continues repeating the same cycle is the question hanging over everything the team does next. When you step back and look at everything that unfolded, the chaos, the pressure, the constant shifting inside the Browns organization, one question rises above all of it. What direction does Cleveland truly want to go? Because at some point, every franchise has to decide whether it's building towards something real or simply reacting to problems as they appear. Shedeur Sanders walked into a storm he didn't create. No first-team reps, no preparation, and no steady structure to lean on. Yet he still showed flashes of composure that the entire offense struggled to match. That alone raised eyebrows around the league. It exposed a deeper truth. Cleveland's issues run far beyond one player, one game, or one bad week. And now the franchise faces a crossroads. Keep repeating the same cycle and watch another young quarterback get swallowed by the noise, or finally slow down, stabilize the system, and build an environment where a talent like Shedeur can actually grow. Fans can